that I did.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you lay all that stone and
Yep.
everything?
I did all that myself. Yeah.
Is that your place?
Yeah. This is my backyard. It is what it is.
Well, let's talk about dancing.
Yes, let's do that. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I haven't seen you for so many years.
I know it. Hasn't it been a long time, man?
But you were on the circuit a long time, right? Weren't you traveling a lot?
I was traveling a lot. Yeah, I ended up traveling all through Europe. I started teaching blues because that's where my background actually started.
I wanted to ask you about that because I saw there's an interview or a talk, there's a discussion that you were talking on the blues on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but let's go way back. You say that's where you started? Or did you have a jazz background?
Well, my dancing started when I was like dancing around on my grandfather's feet. Everybody in my family danced. You know, my grandfather was a blues guy. My dad was
he a musician?
No, just blues. You know, blues music. He was into blues music and blues dancing as part of the black culture.
Mm-hmm. Are you from Detroit originally?
My family's from the South, from Alabama, Geneva, Alabama, 120 miles south of Montgomery.
How did you end up in Detroit?
My family through a series of migrations, and my mother ended up there. I was born in Grand Rapids.
Okay.
Actually, and I moved to Detroit when I was 12, when we were 12. But my grandpa was a blues guy. My father was a standards guy. He was a Dinah Shore, Dinah Washington kind of guy, and my mother was a jitterbugger.
Oh yeah.
So I came into dancing pretty naturally. I started dancing. I said, dancing around doing blues movement stuff with my granddad. He used to put me on his feet and go, "Yeah, come on, boy." Mm-hmm. You know, my mom taught me. She was very social. So with her, I learned how to waltz. I learned how to basic rumba, basic waltz type of thing. And
did your mom teach?
No, just socially. She was very social, and for a long time, I was the man of the house. So I used to get dressed up in my little suit and my little clip-on tie, and my mom would go to these socials, and I would go with her. And so I had to learn how to dance. And then, of course, dancing in the street, street dancing. Everybody danced, I started training when I was 12, African jazz and ballet. I took tap for a short amount of time, but my knees didn't like tap, so I didn't take that very long. And I spent, most of my years, I lived on the southwest side of Detroit, but I couldn't let anybody know in my neighborhood that I danced. So I had to dance on the northwest side of Detroit. So I used to bus across town. I used to take the Woodward bus downtown and then take the Hamilton bus out on the west side and dance out there to a studio there. And I didn't dance. I danced through high school and stuff like that. But after I graduated, went to college. When I got married, my first wife.
What did you study in college?
Electrical engineering.
Really?
Yeah. I went to school in Ohio at DeVry University down in Columbus.
You went there?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's where I got my degree from, my engineering degree. Worked for Bell Telephone for 4 or 5 years during my first marriage. And during that time, the time of my divorce was just before the big disco craze hit, right? So as I graduated in 72. So I was married for about 4.5 years, and then...
so you were not in the dance business then?
No, not at that time. No, I got drawn into it with the whole disco thing, and I started working with, do you know Andra Wathall? No. Okay, well, her name at the time was Andra Jaskowski, and she and I started dancing competitions because these competitions started happening all over, these disco competitions. Mm-hmm. And you can make $1,000, $2,000 a weekend, So we started trying to do that and kind of, get our legs under us in the competition world. And we won our first state dance championship in 1979 in Flint, Michigan.
This was Hustle?
This was a general overall state dance championship. So there was all the styles. She and I did Hustle.
So people could do any kind?
Yes. Yeah. There were people doing cha-cha, people doing East Coast swing, all kinds of different types of dances. And that was our first state championship win was in 79. I started working for Murray's. I went away. I traveled for, 3.5 or 4 years. I did dinner theater. I was on the West Coast. I traveled to the Valley out in California. I studied with a guy named Joe Tremaine there. I did dinner theater, working.
You studied with Joe Tremaine?
Yeah. Oh heck yeah! I was in the Valley for 3.5 months or something. I danced
When
every.
I was out there, I went to his studio for classes often.
I danced every day.
Studio.
Yeah, I was there every day, and I worked my way back across town, across the country, doing dinner theater stuff until I got to Florida. The water stopped me. I worked with a guy there named Joe Michaels for I'm going to say almost 2 years. I started doing some cruises and stuff like that,
So
to
were you
make the
traveling
time.
with a partner? doing
No,
shows?
no,
Or
this
you
is
just teaching?
this is jazz. This is all jazz.
okay,
This
this
is
is
all
jazz.
jazz. I didn't really get back into partner dancing. I was doing social stuff like in the clubs, but I was just training, basically, just training. Came back up to New York, came back home, started working for Murray's. I worked for Murray's until
Who had the studio then?
I was in Southfield, at the Southfield studio, and a guy named Bujak, he was the guy who ran, like there was 5 Murray's studios, or 6, and he was like the quarterback of the entire area. He
They have the master and master franchises now?
yeah, and he ran the whole show. I mean, they used to do this big dance-a-rama
Right.
at the Michigan Inn. Remember that?
I just remember each region would have their own dance room.
Yeah, and he would have all the studios there and him all organized and stuff. And then you were having free dance lessons. People come up, get a little free lesson, and that's how they sign people up. And it was huge. I mean, there would be hundreds of people who would show up for this thing. So I worked for them until I just can't take the studio mentality of how they sell. So I left Murray's.
Was Mark there at the time?
Yes, Mark was there at the time. He was one of the trainers at the time when I was there. When I got into the training program, Mark was one of the trainers, teacher trainers.
Was he in the same studio?
No,
with you?
no. So I mean, let's see. In 84, 85. Anj and I were pretty established at that point. We had won several state championships and all kinds of local competitions and stuff like that,
Had you started to develop the Detroit style at that time, or was that later?
We had started to develop that style together. It was before 79, because that's when we won our state championship. We were already dancing that more linear style. Not the whole rotating slot thing. And so I would say I met her in 77, I think. And then I've always been a dynamics person. Like I want to understand how things work, because that's the engineering brain in my head.
Right.
So I was always breaking down dances and breaking down techniques and trying to look for the similarities. I feel like there's a certain lead and follow technique that transcends all styles. And the way we were doing hustle violated a bunch of those concepts to me. So I kept looking at it, thinking to myself, okay, this is not, how we're doing this is not right. I learned it the way everybody else learned it.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, I did the New York style hustle. I mean, that's all we knew. And okay, here's a funny part.
How did the hustle come into Detroit?
Who
was doing it first? Was it the Latin community?
No, the gypsy community.
Okay.
We had a bunch
that's
of
what Joyce said.
yeah. We had a bunch. Well, she learned that from me. She didn't know because she wasn't around then.
Yeah.
she was a teenager. The gypsy boys used to go back and forth between Detroit and Florida. They would come up here in the
Now,
summer.
when you call them gypsy boys, were they just people that traveled? Or
That's what they called themselves. They called themselves gypsies. I'm assuming that's what they were. But they used to come. There was six or seven guys who used to travel. And we'd only see them in the summer. Then they would leave in the wintertime and go to Florida, and come back up here. And they brought the 3-count hustle here at the Butterfly Suite. There was a big announcement, a new dance style, going to set the disco world on fire, which it did. And the young lady's name was Rosie Madrigal. I'll never forget her. Rosie was just, She was on fire. And they danced. They did this exhibition at the it was the Butterfly Suite at the time. One of the nicer discotheques in the city. Okay, we had the east side and the west side. I could go on about that. I'm not going to. We had the east side and the west side. And the west side dancers.
Everybody seems to have an east side and a west side.
No, but
Or north and a south.
no, but the dancers were totally separate.
Yeah.
Okay, the west side dancers danced these little pub clubs, I call them, with these little dance floors, and that was our claim to fame. I mean, Nunzio's was one of the smallest clubs in the city. It was on Southfield Road in 75, and it was the hot spot for the west side. All the top West Coast hustle dancers on the west side all went to Nunzio's. Okay, on the east side it was Carmen's East was the big club, and the Butterfly was the more classy, smaller but classy club, still really good sized floor. And Characters was Butterfly at that time was the place to go on Saturday night. That's where everybody went. So the West Siders, we perfected hustle. The East Siders perfected East Coast swing. They were the best East Coast swing dancers. They had all kinds of turns and stuff they did with East Coast, and we were hustle dancers. And we used to have these East versus West, and with East Coast versus hustle every year. These big competitions. That's kind of how the city kind of like the East Siders did very little hustle. We did very little East Coast, except for of course the teachers. We did East Coast in the studios, but not socially out to do East Coast all night long. These guys would go out and do East Coast to every song.
So they were dancing to the same music.
Yes.
But not the same dance.
Yep. So it was a great rivalry between us. But again, we had on the west side we had all these little small clubs, and the east side all the big discotheques, Carmen's East and Butterfly and all those, and we had Nunzio's and a place called Cosmos, and Monday night hotspot was Giannopolis, which was an Italian restaurant with a DJ kind of a box in the middle. Right when you first walk in, there was a DJ box, and the floor, and the tables. They would clean off some of the tables, so there was a little dance floor around the DJ box, but it was a postage stamp. Mm-hmm. But Monday nights, every teacher in the city was at Giannopolis.
It's so funny because in those days, everybody that taught went social dancing.
Everybody.
And you hardly see that anymore.
It's
a great loss.
It is a huge loss, but it got to the point where teachers didn't want to dance, with non-dancers, on their time, and that's what teachers will tell you. I don't dance when I go out. I don't.
But we on the whole staff. I mean, we would just go out with each other and dance.
Everybody.
And I don't even see much of that anymore.
Everybody. We said everybody. All the teachers would dance.
We love dancing.
Yeah, together or with anybody, and that's how you got students. We all, when I left Murray's, that's how I got all my students with social dancing. I would imagine. Yeah. So I mean, that's how I got my studio, social dancing. A guy approached me at Giannopolis one night, and I used to see him all the time. He used to sit over in the corner, and he'd always be having a very nice meal. He always had these red wine with the tall glasses and stuff. He was always sitting over in the corner. He came up to me one day and he said, "Hey, how you doing? My name is Terry. Blah blah blah. You have a minute?" So I went over and I sat down, and he said, where do you work? You ever think about opening a studio? I said, well, I thought about it, but that's sometime in the future. He says, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll talk about that sometime. 2 weeks later, so he comes in, and speak. Hey, how you doing? He said, hey, come on, talk business. I said, yeah. Sat down. He said, so about that studio? I said, what about it? When do you want to open it?
Did he dance at all?
I never saw him dance.
Enjoyed watching it.
Yep, I never saw him dance. Before then, I never saw him dance. So I said, well, yeah, I'd love to open it. What were you thinking? He says, well, I think I want to finance you. And I was like, you do?
Well, that just dropped in.
Yeah. He said, I think I want to finance you. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, man, I've been watching you for a long time. He said, you are clearly, hands down, the best dancer here. And I'm just he says, it's a layman's eye. He said, what do you think it would cost to get started? I said, well, I don't know. You got floors, you got mirrors, you got sound systems, you got to get a building. He said, okay. He takes out his checkbook, starts writing.
Really?
I said, what happened? He starts writing, rips off a check and hands it. He says, you find a building and you give me a call and let me know when we're going to start. I picked up the check. It was for $35,000. He just wrote me a check out of his pocket for 35 grand. I just like this. I could not believe it. I was totally stunned.
That just doesn't happen.
It's like a fairy tale. This guy was like a fairy tale. He's still a good friend of mine. We're still really good friends. And I went to Kego Harbor and found this building. And I walked into the building. It was, electrical was hanging down. There's water on the floor. I walked through the building with the owner, Wasserman, John Wasserman. I walked through the building with him. We're looking around, and he says, well, I know it needs this, and I know it needs that. I said, when can we get this? Is my studio. I said, this is it. I had seen like 10 buildings.
Yeah, well, you could fix all that stuff.
But I just knew it. He was like, you mean just like that? I said, just like that. This is my space. I know this is where I should be. And, we did the floors. Of course, he did the build out for me as part of my rent base. Mm-hmm. So we had my rent base, and then I had a part of it that I was paying off. So I just told him what I wanted. He put it in, and then I wrote checks with like the floor and the meters, but he did the build out part, right? All of the electrical and all that. He did all that for me. He got it all set, and then, we hired a flooring company, bought meters, and, built the DJ area and all that stuff. But yeah, it was like out of a fairy tale.
Was
it was
it
crazy.
A social studio right away? Did you teach jazz and other dance forms?
I was up until then, I consider myself a jazz specialist because that's where most of my training was from when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And I traveled all over the country training with these big name jazz guys and modern guys, right? I trained in Chicago. I trained with Hubbard Street.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I trained with Alvin Ailey when they had open trainings, workshops and stuff like that. I would go and spend a weekend with Alvin Ailey, train there. So I consider myself kind of a jazz specialist who knew how to ballroom dance, sort of. And then so I opened a full service studio. I had all the ballet, tap, and jazz, and social with all the American style. I didn't teach much international there. I had one guy who was doing a little bit of international waltz and foxtrot, but that was pretty much it. Did you know Paul Milligan by any chance?
I know the name. I think from the people in Detroit, I know the name. But
Yeah.
I don't know that I met him.
He was a very technical, very good dancer, and his standard was exceptional. He was a very good dancer. Ended up committing suicide, unfortunately. But so I think I was the first full service studio with performing arts and all the ballroom styles, probably in the Midwest. I don't know any other studio that did that. It was either one or the other. Mm-hmm. So yeah, one time we had 3 rooms, 6,500 square feet, 18 teachers.
Wow, that's a big staff.
I had a lot. I had some stuff going on.
What years was that?
I opened the studio in '85 and closed it in '95. It was open for 10 years. Yeah.
Who was your partner before Joyce? Was there one in between the other gal that you mentioned?
No. I had Anja was my first partner. When I went out to Vegas, she and I were trying to save our relationship, basically. And, when you're in a town where you have a lot of history, it's kind of hard to do because everybody's in your business. Mm-hmm. So we talked about it and said, okay, let's relocate. I had this friend in Vegas, so I left. And to establish there, get an apartment, she was supposed to join me. It never happened. She never joined me. And I was in Vegas for 10 or 11, 12 months, maybe 11 months, just under a year. And then I came back. I came back home. I didn't have another partner. I was a solo act until I met Joyce. Mm-hmm. Joyce came along through a male student who wanted to take lessons. He was taking group lessons from me.
Oh, she told me this story.
Yeah. And he wanted to take privates. And he said, well, I don't have a partner. Can I bring my teacher from Martha Murray? And I said, I don't care.
Well, she told me she knew something was going on because she didn't like the hustle either. She didn't like how it felt. She didn't understand it. She didn't really enjoy it. And she told me she was teaching this guy, and he came in and he started to feel different. She said something was going on. She said, "What's going on? You're working with somebody somewhere."
Yeah.
And he was taking lessons
For me.
with you.
Yep.
And she could feel a difference. And
Yep.
then
Well,
she went with him, I guess.
yeah, he asked me if he could bring her. I said, fine, that's great, right? So she comes in. She was at that time. She was only teaching, entry level. She had just started teaching for them, so she was only teaching basics. And as soon as I danced a basic with her, I said, "This is my part. This is the girl right here." She felt immediately great to me, and they came for a few lessons, and I said, how much you come work at my studio? Come work with me, I was looking for a dance partner, and I think you and I would dance really well together. And so she did. That's how she got to dance art. And she did not like hustle. She did not get the 3-count thing to 4-count music for the longest time. But boy, when she got it, she got it. When it clicked, it was like magic. It really was. We competed at American Rhythm in the West Coast Swing Circuit, in the hustle circuit. Shows, showcases, things like that. Started to travel to Europe. The guys were bringing us into Germany, and she didn't do a lot of travel with me in the other countries. They started in Germany, and then our partnership kind of dissolved. And
how did you make those connections? Was that from your travel in the swing circuit or the jazz?
The Europe,
connections?
No, the Europe. This is another one of them weird stories.
You seem to have a lot of them.
Things happen, and you're like, what? Walter Schultz from Braunschweig, Germany. He got my information from another guy who came to a West Coast swing event, and with his partners to compete in the States at the U.S. Open. And he approached me about my hustle. He saw us hustling, and he was just like, "Whoa!" We do a style like that called disco fox. That was the German derivative for hustle.
I have a couple from Germany, also worked in Belgium and then moved here. And I've never heard anyone else, except for them, talk about this disco fox.
Yeah.
Until now.
Yeah.
You said that.
Yeah. It was a.
I said I never heard of that.
It was the German derivative for hustle, for 3-count hustle, and when he saw me dance, he just was like, "Oh my God, I must take lessons from you," So they go home. About a month later, I got an email from this guy, Walter Schultz. He runs the big Disco Fox competition in Frankfurt. And he wants to know if I will come to judge and maybe do a demonstration. And I was like, yes, and yes, I will. And I sent him, he wanted to, send me a video, I want to show everyone, So when I got there, he said, competition was over the weekend. We were communicating back and forth. He said, well, how long can you stay? I said, well, how long do you want me? He said, I can book you for like 2 weeks. Wow. if you want to stay, I was like, I'm in. So I went there the first time. He had me booked in like 5 cities. Yeah, I'd go and do workshops.
Who was taking care of your studio at the time?
When we started traveling to Germany, it was during the time when the studio was dissolving. My studio was dissolving. So we started traveling overseas in the mid '90s. Most of our travel before then was around the States. Joyce and I were at one time engaged.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, at one time we were engaged. That clearly did not work out at that point in time, but we still worked together. So the studio had dissolved at that point in time, but we were still dancing, doing shows and stuff like that, and competitions. And that's how we ran into this guy. I can't remember his name now. I'm trying to remember his name. He's a very German name, like Hans or something. But well, anyway, so I went to Germany. The first time I went there, I was there for 2 weeks, just dancing in this city, dancing in that city, dancing in this city, dancing in that city. Flew home. Those contacts went
Everywhere.
out, right?
Yeah.
And then I started to. I was doing a lot of work in Seattle at that time. I used to fly there twice a month.
Really?
Yeah, twice a month. I'd fly in on a Friday. I'd fly in on a Friday morning. You get there because it's 3 hours earlier. You get there, you have lunch. I would teach 2 or 3 private hours. I teach a workshop Friday night. Over the weekend, between there and the Red Eye back on Sunday, I would teach 30 hours between Friday and Sunday.
Quite a big dance community.
Huge dance community. And I was dancing in the West Coast Swing Hustle community. I was dancing in the salsa community there. And I met a girl named Brenda Russell, and she brought me into the blues community. Because through talking to me, clearly I had a pretty in-depth blues background, music history, and all that kind of stuff. So she got me teaching, actually teachers at first. She was very big into this teacher core group, and I would go there and I would teach teaching techniques, not only in blues but partnering techniques, movement techniques, those kind of things, to teachers. And there was about 12 or 14 teachers that would do these teacher workshops, and it would be an entire weekend. You know what I mean? I'd fly in on Friday. They would do a session on Friday night. We would have different sessions, different types of sessions on Saturday. Then we would have the teachers would then take private instruction on Sunday, and then I would fly home Sunday night, or however it worked out. But we did, several of those big teacher workshops. Once that got into the European community, the blues part got into the European community. Through her, I started doing blues conventions. I didn't even know they existed until I met her. And I started doing blues conventions around the U.S., and that led us to the Berlin Blues Explosion, which led us to Australia. That's led me to England. It's led me to Italy. I've taught blues all over Europe, and it was just another avenue. But it was another one of those weird things where you're just doing what you do. And you meet this person, and then this person goes, bam, and the door swings open, right? And you have all these opportunities. Good training, and
Was Joyce with you during this time?
No, So Joyce and I danced until the studio closed. During that time, we were not together as a couple, but we were still working together. She got engaged, and that caused a little bit of friction. And that to some point we had to stop dancing together because it just wasn't working out, as far as her being available and stuff like that. She had these, she had another life she was starting. And so I stopped dancing with her, and I was dancing mostly, my West Coast Swing and Hustle stuff was almost all solo. All the blues stuff I was teaching with Brenda. So I guess I had a partner of sorts, but she didn't specialize in the other dances. She was really a blues Lindy girl. And she took a little bit of hustle and a little bit of West Coast, so she could kind of intermingle into those, kind of mix into those communities. But she wasn't really that good at it. It didn't want to be. She was very content with, her niche, and I was too. It was fine. So, yeah, that's kind of the mishmash of how these weird doors just swing open in there.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's.
Well, tell me a little bit about your ideas about hustle and the development. And it seemed to catch on because that's what everyone did in Detroit.
Well, when you win all the time,
Yeah.
everybody wants to dance like you, right? The disco scene in the mid '70s, it was being controlled in our area locally by Mike Leach and a girl named Cindy McKay. And Cindy was 90 pounds soaking wet, great little dancer, and Mike was the king of the stag lift. Shaka, shaka, you know.
Were they doing a lot of the aerial work?
He wasn't doing. I don't call them aerials. A stag lift to me is, you know, it's an up down move, right? And
because when they had hustle, at least when I saw it at the United States Champion. Now I danced with Chuck Bannister, who had been U.S. Hustle Champion, but he said that's when they were dancing. But then it became all about the lifts.
yeah,
And when I saw it, that's all it was.
the
A
lifts.
few steps on the floor, and it was all in the air.
Well, that was a New York style.
Yeah.
That was New York style. Yeah, New York style hustle was basically an adagio with a few steps in between. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's all lifts and drops, lifts and
Just a
drops.
way to get back up there.
It's another transition to lift a girl up. And so I was dancing with Anja at the time, and Anja was about 125 pounds. It's a big difference. So we became, you know, sweeps and drops. Our thing was sweeps and drops, you know, moving sweeps and drops, slides. Michael was, ta-da. Eventually what happened was our overall dance technique, because both of us were very avid freestylers. I had my jazz background. Anja was, when I met her, she was the queen of social dance. She could do every single line dance that was ever invented at that time. I don't care what line dance it was, she was a queen. She could really move. That's how I got her. She got my attention. I saw her dancing, and I was like, man, that girl can really dance. And so our overall dancing, because nobody else had that kind of background. You know, they all just started dancing when dancing got popular, basically. And with that kind of a background, you know, we just started winning all the time. Working on the linear movement of the dance, you know, I'm an avid believer, you know, the point A to point B theory, where every dance is just a bunch of lines that go from point A to point B. And only thing that curves are steps that tell you that they curve. A curving feather or a circular run, they tell you that they curve. Everything else is straight. And so but taking that theory in my head, you know, if you dance hustle, it's slow, slow, quick, quick. Or quick, quick, slow, slow, right? If you look at that musically, it becomes a slow and three quicks. Actually, it would be slow, quick, quick, quick. And a lot of people dance it that way. And that's why they got that little hoppy do, right? A little hoppy do. And they also did the pushback to start and one, okay? So for me, first of all, you never push your partner anywhere. So to start by pushing her backwards, it was totally wrong. Because once you tell a guy to push on the N1, then he pushes on every N1, right? That becomes the technique of the dance, to push the lady back on the N1. And there can be really no dance before the first beat. So starting on the N before one did not make any sense to me. So I modified the movement to be a mutual movement of one, as all dances usually are. A mutual movement of one, and then 2 and 3. 1, 2, and 3. So still I have slow, quick, 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 technically. So I thought about that a bit. Thought, well, how can I smooth this out? Because I still had the little hoppy do, which I didn't like hopping. So I tried to figure out how to straighten that out. So I thought, okay, there's a drive, swing, finish theory. Where you drive the first step, you swing through the second step, and then you finish. So I take that, I said, okay, if I employ that, I can dance this like 2 slows, basically. I can go slow, slow, quick, quick.
Now, when you talk about swing and a dance like that, are you talking about the way you use the hip or the body or?
The body, yeah, the body. So if waltz, right? You drive on the first step, you swing on the second step, right? You drive and then you swing up. The second step is actually the larger one. You use the drive to push the swing, right? To drive the swing. So I took that basic concept and applied it to the hustle and tried to dance the second beat as a slow, and take the and move it more towards the 3 rather than dancing it closer to the 2 where it belongs, because the and belongs to 2 right there. So I just pushed it back count-wise and went 1, 2, and 3. Slow, slow, quick, quick, slow, slow, holding that slow as long as I could in order to get the dance to be smoother. there was a rock back action, a ball step rock back, and I took that and made it a together forward action. So there was a clear ending to the movement. So you're dancing, you have a swing, a drive action on one, a swing action on two, and then the finish on the end three. So there was a clear end to the movement, point A to point B, which is in line with kind of how I see mostly every dance style basically should, I think, movement-wise, be danced as a point A to point B to point C type of setup, right? You're dancing, a two-way turn. You dance a V, right? You're dancing line to line to line. You're not dancing any curvature, right? Making it dance a slot rather than what they called a rotating slot made more sense to me, because I feel like every dance movement has to have a definitive beginning and end. It should start, you should know where it starts, and you have a clear idea where it's going to end and the direction it's going to take from there. It should be predetermined. It shouldn't be random. You don't randomly just go around the floor and just lead the lady in all kinds of different directions, and she's constantly looking for you, right? If the lady is really good, experienced, that's fine, but for the beginners, it can be very disconcerting. So, just for me, basic concepts that I would apply to any style. I just tried to apply them to hustle and create a more definitive movement and a clearer line of direction, action for the follow. Because I feel like as soon as she can trust you, the more things you can do.
Right.
Right. As soon as she knows, right. The trust is once she knows that you know where you're going, and she can feel where she's going. No matter what the style, you'll be able to dance better with her. She'll relax with you, right? So it's just employing, like I said, I've always been a technician. I've always torn things apart and wanted to understand what made them work. And just applied that, all the other techniques that I have learned to study with different people. I've studied with a lot of different people. Not only in the jazz world, but in the ballroom world too. Sammy Stoppard and Barbara McCall and those guys. Whenever they used to come to Detroit, I always had sessions with them. Fran Nagel and Mark used to bring them in all the time. Bob Powers, I was a few sessions with Bob and talked about technique, movement. How do you move the body properly? So, again, just trying to apply it to a street dance that I loved and created a style that was very distinctive.
So you don't feel it was an organic development of, as you danced, this happened?
No, I made this happen.
Sat down and thought about it and then...
No, it wasn't organic. There was nothing just naturally evolving.
Because, sometimes that happens, and then you go, well, let me figure out
what's going on.
Happened.
No.
It was the other way around.
It was planned.
That's unusual for dancers.
It was planned. The whole thing, the whole technique thing was applied technique from other techniques from all the other styles, and some basic quality that I think all dancing should have. And I wanted to apply it to this dance because, as I was looking at it, it didn't have any of that quality to it. So no, it wasn't okay. Okay. It's one step at a time. Okay. Gonna put this on a line. Okay. Give it a direction. It needs a clear ending. We have to have a timing that makes sense and a lead action that's common to all the other styles. Yeah, application of good technique in the long run. But
well, how about if we do a little bit of that?
Ooh, I'd love that. Show me. Okay, so in the first days of Hustle, it was started off with a rock step action, which went quick, slow, quick. So you started off the dance like this, right? Quick, slow, quick, like that, right? Yep, jerky, very jerky. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to smooth the dance out. So I started it with a common movement action where the lady is dancing forward and the leader is also dancing forward. So we start, instead of doing in 1, 2, 3, the count, I take the count and I change it to 1, 2, and 3. So walk towards me, have 1, 2, together forward. 1, 2, together forward. 1, 2, together forward. Slow, quick. Slow, quick, slow, quick. Yeah? instead of the rock step back on the ball, that quick action was a together forward action, which you are doing quite nicely.
I've always danced it that way, and I never knew it came from you.
It's me back. Okay, so the other thing is employing a bit of a technique of body swing, right? The object in motion stays in motion, so you want to let the body swing in the direction that you're rotating as far as you can. So as you come in from here, as you swing out, yep, the left side swings, right? So your extension for that side is, as you swing out, just let your steps continue to your finish. Yeah, 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 yeah. Then the hand releases, straight. Ah, yeah, yeah, da, yeah, yeah, da, yeah, yeah, da, yeah, yeah. Okay? So it became very smooth and long because we have the beginning and end piece, right? That together action at the end, you start forward on one, this is the designated end of the movement. So we got what we always got, we got the picture moment. Right, you just, that's when you go.
Gives you the space too for the knee.
Yes, it gives you space. And styling, right? Stretch, all of those things. It also lets you dance the same material much faster. Because that piece is defined. So we would dance and compete at 145 beats a minute.
Right.
Faster than anyone else, with more control than anyone else. And they could say, how the heck are they doing that? Right? Which also gives you how you stand out, right, in the competition. What else we talk about, go over? Anyway, that's basically the basic action.
Well, maybe talk a little bit about the man being where the way you can be confident
Well,
that
this
he's
is,
going to be
yeah, this-
keeping this.
yeah,
line.
this is the line of direction, right? So, for me, every movement is just a series of straight lines. It doesn't matter what dance you're doing. There's always a series of straight lines. So we have to get that point A to point B definition, which builds confidence in the follower. When she realizes that you know where you're going, it tells her where she's going, she relaxes and you can do more. You get to relax and have more fun. The swing action in the dance, always, depending on the direction, always swinging left or right, depending on what side is swinging at the end. Swing. Right? We just dance on the camera?
So easy to dance.
I know. Okay, the equality, let's talk about, how we relate to the partner, connect to the partner, and how we relay information. Because we never push, pull, move, place, put our partner anywhere. So trying to get that concept across of how we get her to move without pulling is always a big thing for me. So when I dance, I'm always just conveying information to her. My body position is to you, and movement is relationship to your movement, rather than me trying to put you someplace. Right? It's another big concept for me for years to learn that.
Yeah, I can feel your weight and the connection of your arms to your body.
Yeah. It's a good thing. Yeah.
So now talk a little bit about blues.
Blues. Blues. Well, blues is the basis for pretty much every style that we listen to, music that we listen to in the U.S. and around the country, around the world.
That's
Blues,
where all the rock and roll came out of.
everything comes out of blues.
Yeah.
Yeah, blues comes from slave hymns and work chants, of slaves' work chants is where blues actually comes from. And from there progress on to out of the fields, out of the church, into the social world where people take those rhythms and make music out of them, one way or the other. Washboards, whatever they could do to make music. On into instruments that develop into blues music as a structure, music structure. 8-bar blues is the most popular style, and that comes from the phrasing of slave chants. Is where that comes from. So call and response. Hey yo, that kind of thing. That came from the fields.
And it's also a bit of gospel
from the fields into the church, into blues, and then to all, into all the other styles of music that have come out of blues. It is, in movement, blues movement, body movement, is the basis of all the African movement that has been refined into what we call Cuban motion, but it basically all is Afro-Cuban. So it all comes from first basic action and a rolling action through the hips for blues, African style dancing, all your African, if you did an African class, you would see all of this movement where it started. You think, oh, that's just like what we all
Well,
do.
I danced in a company when I was a teenager that my teacher was mostly in this Afro-Cuban sort of style.
Beautiful, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you do so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, so, that as our dancing evolves, right, to music, and always with music, there's movement, it always goes together. Blues and the Afro-Cuban, effect, or how they moved, like, if you go to Afro-Cuban, if you go to Brazilian Cuban, Brazilian African, all these different types of areas, they took this movement and they created their own little style, but it's all the same. You look at it, the movement, how it's rolling through the hips and all that, it's all the same. So it's all the same move. You know, it's African move.
So they're dance, a couples dance?
Blues is, yeah, so if you take the basic partnering, so if two people can dance, right? It's basically this way. Yeah? So blues. Right? It was very, movement through the body was very African based. And then how you move the dance, if you, hesitations, always had a little bit of rolling, because that was where, just another base of the African movement. You would swing out, you could dance. Rhythms were bass rhythms, singles, doubles, delayed singles, things like that. And it was very improvised. There was no pattern. Okay, the closed action was called the grind in the old days, right? Because it looks like you're basically grinding on each other. But if you're in good dance position, you lays on your hip, right? But that's how people who saw it described it. And then you would see, they did swing outs and they did on turns, but it was all very improvised as far as the timing was concerned. So if you look at timing, in movement, how many weight changes we have in 2 beats? If it's a triple, it's 1 and 2. If it's a walk, it's 2 beats, 2 steps. So if we have a single, it's you step on the first beat and you hold on the second beat. 1, 2, 1, 2. If it's a delayed single, you hold on the first beat and dance on the second beat. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. If it was a double, you dance on every beat. 1, 2. Those are the 3 basic timings that you would see people dancing blues. Okay? From those basic timings, all of our other dances come. Okay? So let's say if I take a single is transferring on the first beat, holding on the second beat. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then somebody said, why am I holding there? I can do something else. Music comes along, right? Samba. 1, 2, 1, up 2, 1, up 2, 1, up 2, right? So in the Brazilian culture, they took the hold and they put that syncopation in. They created samba. So I have a delayed single now. I have 1, 2, that's a hold on the first beat, move on the second beat. Somebody said, the music is doing something different. I'm going to do 1 and 2, 1, swing 1. 1 and 2. Okay? You have your walking action. Then the music comes along. There's a slow, quick, slow. First one we thought was foxtrot. Before that, turkey trot before that, right? So when you start, trot was every beat. You'll start putting little holes in the music. Okay? You start music, people put music together, people dance to it. But it all starts with this double, delay, single, single. If you take those 3 steps, you can add something to it, take something from it, and create every dance in the world.
I think it's so important that people watch this video, that all these dances have come out of music.
Absolutely.
And I think to some extent we're losing some of that
We have,
technique and competition and steps, and thus losing some of this authenticity of the music is determining where the dance goes.
people have become too expressive. They want to express the dance and not dance the dance.
That's
And you-
interesting.
It's the truth. In the old days, it was how well you danced the rhythm. When people watched you dance, they judged how good you were by how good you danced the rhythm that was playing. It didn't matter what the words were. It only mattered what the rhythm is. Okay? In things like vaudeville and other forms of entertainment like that came out, where people would come out and they would just emote the song and not have one rhythm going in their bodies. But people paid dollars and dollars and dollars to see that stuff. Right? That has become integrated into the dance community, and now it's more important to emote the dance than it is to dance the dance. It's like, no, you're having all your dessert, there's no meal. You're not having, where's your steak and potatoes?
Where's the beef?
Yeah, where's the beef? Yeah, I want my meal first, and then I want to add everything else to that. I want a glass of wine, and I want a piece of cherry pie to accent the meal. I don't want to just have wine and cherry pie, and then have a little piece of meat like this, and that's all I have. But this is where dancing has gone to. We've gone to this all this expression that West Coast swing has. We're talking about changing the name of West Coast, right? To flow.
Oh, really?
You know, it was like, no, you're either doing West Coast or you're doing flow. If you want to do flow, that's fine, because that just lacks West Coast swing technique. It's beautiful, you got some great dancers, but you can't change West Coast swing into flow. All the people doing West Coast, what are you going to tell them? You're doing
Well,
flow
I know
now?
there's quite a split there.
Well, the young people, they want to emote the dance. Right? They want to dance the melody. They want to express the melody into the movement, which is fine.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's place for that.
It is, but make a division for that, right? You dance West Coast over here, you dance flow over here. You don't change West Coast to flow. Yeah. So, I think this is what you're talking about, right? How dancing has changed so much.
Yeah.
It's all
Well, and
about-
I think some of it is the fact that so many people in business don't social dance today. They just don't have their roots in that. They learned in the studio, they teach in the studio.
And they leave it in the studio.
They leave it in the studio. Yeah, and I think that the social dance, at least in our field, has suffered. I think in the Balboa community, there's still a lot of social dancing, and a lot of the tango community, depending on where it is, there's a lot of social dancing.
Yeah, in Lindy Hop.
I'm hoping we get it back,
Yeah,
yeah.
the Lindy Hop, all those, the ones that are still very social, and not studio bound, right? Those guys are still out, just hustling the dance to dance. They still love it. All the teachers are out there till 4 o'clock in the morning, every morning.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I'm doing.
Here's the way,
Well, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah.
We could just talk.
You look marvelous, darling.